Welcome to the Utilities Committee of Troy City Council. It's Monday, July 6th, 6 p.m. My name is Doug Tremblay, and to my left is Bill Twiss. We're the two members of the committee here today, and we are to provide a recommendation concerning two items. The city engineer, Joe Rhodes, will inform us of the information.
Good evening. The first item that we're discussing is at the wastewater treatment plant pertaining to our biosolids and how we manage those. Currently, we are in a 10-year agreement with Synagro, and we began the agreement with them in 1995, and then it was renewed in 2005. We went out to our RFPs earlier this year, and we're coming to you with a recommendation of Agri-Sludge Inc. They're out of Shreve, Ohio. They've been in business since 1978. They're a family-owned business. There are over 100 communities that he works for in the state of Ohio. And so they are coming to us with a cost not to exceed a total cost not to exceed of $645,500. It's a multi-year agreement. It'd be a 10-year agreement again. This would be a savings of what we're estimating right now. Right now, we do pay a fuel surcharge. We would not have a fuel surcharge unless the fuel gets over $4 a gallon. And currently, just FYI, currently the fuel is $2.20 a gallon. So that's another item. Currently, our sludge is processed as part of this contract. One of the things they would be doing is replacing our belt filter press out there. Our belt filter press is about 20 years old, was installed in 1995 with the original contract. So as part of this agreement, they will be capitalizing that equipment as part of our per dry ton cost. It's a professional services agreement, and so we just request the authorization to forward it on to council. And Agri-Sludge Inc. is the company's name.
Well, thank you, Jill. You're not requesting emergency on this then?
No.
On this item? And we did this a year ago. We had that trial period, and it was very effective.
This is something different.
This is something different, yes.
This is our conventional waste hauling of solids when they settle out of the process or they are pressed out of the process.
Okay.
And this is the company who would take it away into the landfill.
Gotcha. Did you have any questions, Bill?
This company we've used for the last 20 years, correct?
Synagro is the other company, so we're actually moving away from Synagro.
From Synagro.
Yes,
okay.
yes. And really, when we looked at the RFPs, essentially what you do is you review the RFPs based on qualifications and we felt that this company, especially being local, Synagro, we've had good luck with Synagro, but Synagro is out of the East Coast, and so just with this company being local, and actually some of the employees are actually originally from Synagro. So the company's out of Shreve, but there is a subcontractor, if you want to say, that they work with out of St. Paris. So pretty close.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Yes, sir.
Phillips?
Thank you. Yeah, there's some feedback with the volume.
Yeah.
If it can be turned down just a touch, would be probably helpful. Jill, I'm sorry, did you say that the fuel surcharge was $2.20 a gallon, or fuel is at $2.20? Diesel is at $2.20 a gallon what we're paying for this?
Correct. Correct. And
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
That's all I needed to know about that. The filter system with Synagro, they installed that, and this will be removed, and they will replace their own system. Is it a different system, or is it just a new filter?
It's just actually a new filter. So essentially with our first contract, I believe in 95, from the records that I've seen and read, is that they installed it in 95 and then capitalized it in the first 10-year agreement. So yes, as part of this contract, they'll remove the old, install the new, and replace it. And then we essentially provide the building and the electric.
Right. Are we paying them an installments, of monthly installments, or will this be an annual contract that will pay it a lump sum, do you know?
We pay them monthly
Monthly? Okay.
based on our dry tons.
I don't think I have any questions, thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions on this item? Bill, what's your pleasure?
Move forward.
So we'll move forward on this first item and provide a positive recommendation.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
And second item, Jill?
You guys get a lot of FaceTime with me tonight. You enjoying this? The second item is requesting authorization pertaining to the lower Great Miami River discharging. Ohio EPA has recently, they've recently began to threaten and have actually come to the table with phosphorus limits. And so if you guys have all heard of St. Mary's Lake, as well as Lake Erie, and the whole phosphorus and the algae bloom. So phosphorus is kind of the leading cause of what these how these algae blooms are created. So Ohio EPA, in response to that, has threatened and have actually began to put stricter limits on what they call POTWs. They're essentially wastewater treatment plants. One of the reasons that they've done this to the wastewater treatment plants is because they have control over the wastewater treatment plant. Their wastewater treatment plants are point sources. Non-point sources such as agricultural, such as stormwater runoff, Ohio EPA doesn't have control over those. So as part of that, the lower Great Miami River, yes, we're a part of the upper, but the lower Great Miami River, including Dayton and Montgomery County, have formed a coalition where they want to, instead of Ohio EPA with very elementary data applying limits to us, they are saying, let's form a group and let's figure out what the limits should be. So let's do some testing in the streams. And so they've reached out to us, as even though we're a part of the upper and them being lower, saying, hey, you guys are, a contributing, somebody on our side, essentially Montgomery County, Dayton, and 15 other communities. And so we are the furthest north, but they're requesting us to be a part of it. We want to be a part of it. Staff recommends that we be a part of it because we want the benefits from that too. At this point, this study is estimated to cost $500,000, but the city of Troy's estimate right now, they're estimating us to be 4% of that for a max of $25,000. We have funds in the sewer fund, and if money does get tight, if there's unexpected costs, then we may come back at the end of the year for reappropriations, but at this time we are not requesting that. And so that's about it.
Our amount is $15,000. If there's some people that don't participate, is
our max is 25.
Okay.
And so we've already talked to Dayton and Montgomery County, and them being one of the largest contributors, we've had discussions, and they've said if people don't, if some people drop out, we may all take a little bit, but they'll take the brunt of it because they have the most to gain out of all of this.
And just to follow up a little bit more, right now Troy would be the most northern POTW to participate. However, Sydney and Piqua are both looking at the issue as well. We all have something to lose with these limits. The struggle here is that typically when these limits are established, it is after extensive research and study are done over months, if not years, by the EPA and others. And then the limits are imposed. And we typically have a lot of lead time when I would say, what is it, every 5 years do we get a new permit?
Mm-hmm.
We get some advance notice. And in this case, the first permits have started to become renewable, not in our case, but in a couple of the wastewater plants south of us. And the EPA is starting to impose this limit, and there's never been one before. Conservatively, according to our superintendent, Tim Snyder, if we are required to add this treatment to maintain below the limits. The estimate that I heard was anywhere from $18,000 to $20,000 a year in additional operating costs to our plant. So it certainly does make some sense for us to be part of the study with a limit of $25,000 within the first year. If we can avoid it or at least push it off, you know, we would have paid for our participation and gotten good data and a good benchmark, and maybe be able to argue with the EPA that they're barking up the wrong tree.
Thank you. Are you asking for emergency?
We are not.
Not? Okay. Bill, do you have any questions?
The only question I have is, will they actually test our water up here? Is all the testing done in the lower basin?
We haven't actually, obviously our water flows down there, but I don't believe, I'm not sure if the sample locations have actually been identified, because I do know that they are just in the process of like going out for RFPs for this. So I don't think at this point that they have identified the specifics, but we will definitely be sitting at the table if we enter into this MOU and the cost sharing agreement. So we'll be a voice at the table.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions?
Yes,
Mr. Phillips?
Thank you. Jill, are we, the consortium that'll be built out of this, we will be placing the sample spots, or we will be picking those out? That all of that process is what is included in this $500,000?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
is there any state input that's going into this?
State funds, you're
No,
saying?
State input, verbally, requirements, any input at all coming from the state in this MOU and in this study?
I don't
Well-
think they're going to have any, in other words, will the EPA participate in the development of the
Right.
specs or anything like that? I don't know that that's
Well,
the case.
I can say that I'm sure that whoever they hire will be very knowledgeable about the standard and how EPA does do their testing. Obviously, we want to play by EPA's rules,
Sure.
so that we don't come back, spend all this money, and then all of a sudden EPA goes, oh, that wasn't by, how we would have done it. So yeah, EPA will be at the table. And in fact, I know that Dayton and Montgomery County have sat down with EPA, and I think that they were trying to, I think they had exhausted all avenues with EPA pertaining to this, and they said, well, then let's just do it on our own. So does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
And now, do we monitor our output that flows into the mine? I mean, we're measuring outputs and chemicals and all.
Most
those.
certainly.
So our data should be able to be applicable at some point?
Yes, and part of the other part of this is that, so while the group wants to look at the data and get all this data, the other part is, okay, well, how much is coming from the POTWs, the point sources, versus the non-point sources? And I think that's going to be addressed too, saying, EPA, you're barking up the wrong tree.
Right.
But, so,
Okay.
okay.
Now, Mr. Titterington alluded to Sydney and Piqua, and that was one of my questions, why they were not being in this particular study.
Yeah, they may be included in this particular study. People, right now, this is kind of a living, like people are signing on as time goes on. And so they were just reached out to. Again, through some of my connections down in Montgomery County, he was saying, why aren't you here? And so with Christy coming on, literally, I was like, okay, Christy, can you go down there? She went down there, and it was like, yeah, we definitely need to be a part of this. So we just recently heard about it, and at the same time, nothing's been finalized. So they've just been kind of creating this group, and so this is the first formal kind of agreement consortium, and so Piqua and Sydney and I actually had a conversation with an employee from Piqua to say, hey, are you guys a part of this? And so he hadn't heard anything about it, but I'm assuming that it should be going up the chains.
Okay. And are we periodically, I don't know, on an annual basis or biannual basis, are we testing river water independently of our discharge, north and south of town, to compare?
We do that on a monthly basis.
Anyone else have any questions? Mrs. Baker?
I'm just trying to understand a little bit more, but if the EPA sets one level or one set of standards, and this group determines a different set of standards or a different level, we still have to go with the EPA, don't we?
Well, I think then you can sway them a little bit more. If you have actual data, you can't go to EPA with your, pockets empty saying, why are you setting this limit on us? Once we have all this data and this information, we can say, okay, look, this is what we're doing. We're testing upstream and down, we've taken all these samples and we are not negatively impacting the streams, the rivers, it's something else. So it's part of that. And also EPA does this sort of same study, but on a very minimal basis. And that's part of the problem. That's why the group feels that we're getting this limit placed upon us, because they're saying it's kind of ambiguous and doesn't have a lot of backing. And so that's what we're saying. If you're going to place this upon us and it's ambiguous, let us do the data collection and let us prove what it should be. And so I do know they're in conversation with EPA.
And if our levels would be different from those downstream, then we would only be required to meet the levels that we're discharging. Is that correct? I mean, it really doesn't have anything to do with the whole group at that point.
Right, yeah. I think it's just kind of getting the consortium so we can collect all the data all at once and one person can analyze it all in accordance with the EPA. So yes, I agree with you that saying there's not going to be one level for the 15 entities that are part of this. There may be different levels for each. And we may see that the stream doesn't vary very much, and so maybe there should be no level.
Right, I understand. Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
One additional, if I may.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm reading between the lines here. You're saying that Ohio EPA is kind of arbitrarily picking a number out of the sky without valid data to back it up.
That's,
Maybe an unrealistic number to be able to be reached by any number of agencies.
yes, that's the beginning of this discussion. That's kind of how it started, saying, EPA, show me the data of how you're setting our limits. And if you're just saying one, and you're just saying one because, you've done other streams that are one, then let's go back. If you're not going to do the data, let us do the data before you start putting limits on everybody, and let us prove to you, maybe it should be one. That could be the outcome, but that's no worse off than we are now. But we're really feeling like it's going to be opposite.
This study would also indicate whether our wastewater treatment plant is a problem or is runoff from other sources too, because of so many data points you have.
Correct. And we're pretty certain that our wastewater we are. I just wanted, we're certain that our wastewater treatment plant is not a problem. We meet EPA limits that are currently set upon us. And we actually do, test for phosphorus, monthly? Yeah. Monthly. And so, and then also just understanding the vast body of water that's passing by the trickle of the wastewater treatment plant coming out is really what our point is.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anything further? What was your?
I'd like to move forward.
Okay. Let's move forward. I agree. And without emergency.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anything else to come before Utilities Committee?
No, sir.
We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.